2025 will be remembered as a year that tested institutions, reshaped leadership, and redefined power in Africa and across the world. It was a year where a lot of countries went to the ballot, where diplomacy tried to quiet decades-long conflicts, where aging leaders tightened their grip on power while youth-driven revolutions were seen on the streets, and where Africa stood not only as a subject of global affairs, but a central player in them. My name is Fathiya Nur, and this is the 2025 recap of Africa and global events. Now, the events of 2025 revealed a continent in motion, navigating democracy, disruption, and diplomacy in a rapidly shifting global order. Across Africa, elections were held under intense scrutiny. You could say some were historic and some were disputed. In Gabon, a country emerging from decades of dynastic rule, voters went to the polls less than 2 years after a military coup ended the Bongo era. The man who led that coup, General Brice Oligui Nguema, would go on to win the presidency with an overwhelming majority. In Malawi, politics delivered one of the most unexpected comebacks of the year as former President Peter Mutharika returned to power at the age of 85, a reminder that African politics continues to blur the line between political renewal and political recycling. In Cameroon, continuity once again triumphed over change. President Paul Biya, already the world's longest-serving head of state, secured an 8th term, extending a rule that began in 1982 and is supposed to end in 2032. In Tanzania, an election that delivered a landslide victory on paper was met with widespread criticism, protests, and international concern over democratic standards. And in Guinea-Bissau, voters never got the final word at all as military coup interrupted the electoral process entirely, plunging the country once more into political uncertainty. Now, beyond the ballot box, 2025 also reinforced a troubling pattern that has defined much of Africa's recent political history: the persistence of military intervention in civilian governance. Let's start with Madagascar, where youth-led protests over economic hardship escalated into a full-scale military takeover. In Guinea-Bissau, soldiers seized the power days after voting. And in Benin, long viewed as a democratic outlier in a coup-prone region, an attempted military takeover was narrowly thwarted, raising alarms across West Africa about the fragility of democratic institutions. Yet 2025 was not only about crisis and collapse. It was also a year of diplomacy and global engagement. In Washington, longtime rivals, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, signed a US-mediated peace agreement aimed at calming one of Africa's most persistent and deadly conflicts. While implementation remains fragile, the agreement signaled renewed international attention to African-led peace efforts. And in November, Africa made diplomatic history. For the first time, the G20 summit was held on African soil. Johannesburg hosted the world's most powerful economies under the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability, firmly placing Africa's development priorities, debt challenges, and energy transition at the center of global discussions. Globally, power shifts were just as dramatic. The United States witnessed the return of Donald Trump to the presidency, the first non-consecutive second term in modern history, ushering in sweeping policy reversals and renewed debate over immigration, borders, and global alliances. His administration's decision to restrict or ban travel for more than 19 countries, including several in Africa, sent diplomatic ripples across continents. And in a year marked by leadership change, the world also said goodbye to a moral figurehead. Pope Francis passed away on Easter Monday, closing a papacy defined by humility, reform, and outreach to the global south. 2025 also marked the passing of several influential African figures, leaders, and cultural icons whose lives shaped not only their nations, but the wider continent. In Namibia, the nation mourned the death of Sam Nujoma, the country's founding president and a towering liberation figure who died at the age of 95. In Kenya, the continent bid farewell to a defining voice in modern politics, Raila Odinga, the former prime minister and lifelong advocate for democratic reform. Odinga died at the age of 80 while receiving treatment in India. The cultural world of music also lost one of its brightest stars with the death of Amadou Bagayoko, half of the globally celebrated Malian musical duo Amadou and Mariam. Bagayoko, who died at the age of 70, introduced African music creativity to global audiences by blending traditional Malian sounds with rock, blues, and pop. Now, as 2025 comes to an end, the continent and the world reflect on a year of challenge, change, and resilience. The question now is, what will 2026 hold?